If you've ever wondered what it feels like to lose everything in the space of 3 seconds, stay with me because I lived it. Not in a car crash, not in a hospital waiting room, in a hotel bed at 6 in the morning, when I heard a key slide into a lock that wasn't supposed to open for another 2 days. What happened next didn't just end a marriage. It taught me something about love, guilt, and consequence that I don't think I'll ever fully recover from. And if you stick with me until the end, you'll understand exactly why. The sound wasn't loud. That's the part people never expect. They think betrayal announces itself with shouting, with slammed doors, with drama you'd see in a movie trailer. But real betrayal is quiet. It's a small metallic click, barely audible over the hum of a hotel air conditioner in downtown Charleston, South Carolina. That click was the sound of a keycard sliding into a lock, and it was the sound that ended my marriage. I remember the exact time, 6:04 a.m., the red numbers. On the nightstand clock burned themselves into my memory the way a scar burns itself into skin. Jordan was still asleep next to me, one arm draped over my waist. His breathing slow and even, completely unaware that our entire world was about to collapse. Pale early light was coming through the gap in the curtains, the kind of soft gray light that makes a room feel honest, almost merciless, like it's daring you to look at what you've done. And then the door opened. Daniel, my husband of 7 years, stood in the doorway. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. His eyes moved from me to Jordan and back again. And in that half second, I watched something in him go completely still, like a light switching off behind his eyes. I opened my mouth to say something. I don't even know what I was going to say. There was nothing to say, but no sound came out. He looked at the key card in his hand like he'd forgotten he was holding it. Then he let it drop. It hit the carpet without a sound, which somehow made everything worse. And he closed the door, gently, like he didn't want to wake anyone, like he was leaving a sleeping baby's nursery instead of walking away from his marriage. Jordan sat up, blinking, confused. "Was that your husband?" I couldn't answer him. My hands were already shaking as I grabbed my clothes off the floor, my mind racing through 100 questions at once. How did he find me? I had covered every angle. I told Daniel I was spending the weekend in Savannah with my college roommate, Priya. I even sent him a screenshot of a fake Airbnb confirmation to make the story airtight. I had planned this for weeks. Every detail, rehearsed and double-checked. And in 6 seconds, all of it had unraveled. The drive from Charleston back to our house outside Atlanta took just under 5 hours, and I don't think I breathed properly for a single mile of it. My phone sat face up on the passenger seat, silent. No calls. No texts. Nothing. I kept glancing at it at every red light, every gas station, half hoping for a furious message I could at least respond to, half terrified of exactly that. When I finally pulled into our driveway on Maple Ridge Court, Daniel's truck was already there. My stomach dropped. I sat in the car for almost 10 minutes, rehearsing what I would say, bracing myself for the explosion. I was sure was waiting for me on the other side of that front door. But when I walked in, the house was empty. No note on the kitchen counter. No suitcase missing from the closet. No sign that anything had happened at all, except for the crushing, suffocating silence that filled every room like smoke after a fire. I called his name. Nothing. I checked the garage. His truck was there. But he wasn't. I checked his phone's location on the family tracking app we'd set up years ago for road trips. It showed nothing. Turned off? For 3 days, that silence didn't break. I called him. I texted him an apologies, explanations, please just talk to me. Over and over, message after message that went unanswered and unread. He didn't show up to his job at the logistics company, where he'd worked for nearly a decade. His coworkers told me when I finally called to ask that he'd taken emergency personal leave. The only sign that he was even still alive, still functioning somewhere out in the world without me, was a $3,000 withdrawal from our joint checking account on the second day. I didn't sleep. I barely ate. I sat on the living room floor some nights just staring at my phone, willing it to light up. On the 4th day, I came home from the grocery store. I remember I'd bought things for a dinner. I was sure he'd never eat with me again. And I nearly dropped the bags in the doorway. Daniel was sitting on the couch, calm, scrolling through his iPad, like it was any ordinary Tuesday evening. "Hey," he said. His voice was even, steady, almost unbearably normal, like nothing in the world had happened, like I hadn't spent 3 days in a state of total collapse waiting for him to come back. "Daniel," my voice cracked on his name. "Please, I am so sorry. I don't even know where to start, but please, just let me explain." He set the iPad down on the coffee table, slowly, deliberately, and looked at me. There was no anger in his face. That was the part that terrified me most. I had braced myself for rage. I could have handled rage. What I got instead was something far colder, a kind of quiet, exhausted calm that told me he had already done all his grieving without me in the room. "How long?" he asked. I hesitated. Just for a second. But that second was enough. He saw it, and I watched the last flicker of hope drain out of his face. "It started about 4 months ago," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant for it to turn into anything. I was lonely. You'd been working so much and we barely talked anymore, and He raised his hand just slightly and I stopped. "Don't," he said. "I don't need the excuses. I just needed to know if you'd actually lie to my face about it. And you just did for about 3 seconds before you didn't." The room went silent again. I sat down slowly at the kitchen table because my legs didn't feel like they could hold me up anymore. Then, quietly, almost like he was talking to himself more than to me, he said, "You know why I was even at that hotel?" I shook my head, unable to speak. "I wasn't there to catch you. I didn't even know. I booked that weekend for you. As a surprise. You'd been so stressed about work, about your mom's surgery, about everything. I thought a couple of nights at a nice place on the water would help you relax. I drove down early to check us in and set things up before you got back from Savannah." He let that last part hang in the air, the quotation marks audible in his voice. The woman at the front desk told me my wife had already checked in. With another man. I put my face in my hands. There was nothing I could say that would undo that image. Daniel, standing at a hotel counter in Charleston, holding flowers probably, finding out his marriage was a lie from a stranger behind a desk. "I saw enough," he said simply. "That's all I needed to see." He stood up, grabbed his truck keys off the counter and said, "I'm going to stay at my sister's place in Marietta for a while. Don't call me. I'll call you when I'm ready." And then he was gone again, and I was left standing in the wreckage of a life I had built with my own 2 hands and then torn apart with them too. The days that followed blurred together. I stopped going into the office, telling my manager I had a family emergency, which wasn't exactly a lie. I couldn't sleep for more than an hour at a time. Food had no taste. I kept replaying every version of the last 4 months in my head, trying to find the exact moment I could have stopped, could have turned back, could have chosen differently. Because here's the truth I had to sit with alone. In that too quiet house, Daniel wasn't just my husband. He was the person who drove 3 hours in a snowstorm to be at my grandmother's funeral. He was the one who learned to make my mother's arroz con pollo recipe just so I wouldn't miss home too much during the holidays. He was steady in a way I had stopped appreciating, because steady had started to feel boring instead of safe. And I had traded 7 years of that steadiness for a few reckless months of, feeling wanted by someone new. On the 6th day, I came home to find a large manila envelope sitting on the kitchen counter. My name was written on the front in Daniel's handwriting, the same handwriting that used to sign birthday cards, "Love always, D." My hands were shaking so badly I almost couldn't open it. Divorce papers. No note, no explanation. Just the cold, clean finality of legal paper. I sat at that kitchen table for almost an hour before I even had the strength to stand up. Then I got in my car and drove to his sister Renee's house in Marietta, because I couldn't just let this be the end without at least trying to say something. Renee opened the door and looked at me with an expression I'll never forget, not hatred, just deep, tired disappointment. The look of someone who had clearly heard the whole story already. But she let me in anyway. Daniel was out on the back patio, sitting in one of those folding lawn chairs, holding a mug of coffee he wasn't drinking. He didn't look surprised to see me. He just watched me walk out, his face unreadable. "I know I don't deserve to be standing here," I started, my voice already trembling. "But I needed you to know that this was never about you not being enough. It was me, I was selfish. I was careless with the best thing I've ever had. And I understand that now, even if it's way too late to matter." He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at Renee's small backyard, at the swing set left over from when her kids were younger. Finally, he spoke. "I believe you," he said. "I believe that you're sorry. But love isn't just a feeling you say out loud when you get caught. It's the sum of every choice you make when nobody's watching. And you already made yours." Tears were running down my face at that point, and I didn't even try to stop them. "Please," I said. "Just give me a chance to show you I can be different." He let out a long breath, the kind of exhale that carries more weight than words. "You can stay for dinner," he said. Just dinner. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even close. But it was something. A small, fragile thread connecting us to what we used to be. Renee made pasta, and the three of us sat around her small kitchen table making stiff, careful conversation about things that didn't matter: her daughter's upcoming dance recital, a work project I was barely paying attention to, the weather. It was the strangest dinner of my life, filled with a silence that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with grief. When I reached across the table and tried to take his hand at one point, he gently pulled it back. "I'm not there," he said quietly, "and I honestly don't know if I ever will be." 2 weeks passed. 2 of the longest weeks of my life, spent in a house that echoed with everything that used to be in it. I went through the motions: work, groceries, therapy sessions I'd finally started because I knew I needed them, whether Daniel and I ever spoke again or not. Then one morning, my phone buzzed with a text from him. No words, just a photo. Daniel smiling, really smiling. The kind of smile I hadn't seen from him in months, even before the affair, standing next to a woman I didn't recognize. Her hand was resting lightly on his arm. No caption, no explanation needed. I sat there staring at that photo for a long time, feeling something break open in my chest all over again, except this time it wasn't shock. It was clarity. He had moved on. Genuinely, fully moved on, in the time it had taken me to barely start facing what I'd done. And in that moment, sitting alone in the kitchen where I used to make him coffee every morning, I finally understood something I don't think I was ready to hear before. This wasn't revenge. Daniel wasn't trying to hurt me by sending that photo. He was simply living his life, a life that no longer had space in it for me, and he wanted me to stop waiting for a door that had already closed. I hadn't just betrayed my husband in a hotel room in Charleston. I had unraveled 7 years of trust in a single reckless choice, and no amount of apologizing after the fact could rebuild what I had spent months quietly tearing down. Here's what I've come to understand, months later, looking back on all of this with a kind of painful, hard-won clarity. Guilt doesn't erase consequence. Saying I'm sorry doesn't reverse the momentum of choices already made. And sometimes the person you desperately want back has already, quietly, painfully, learned how to build a life that doesn't include you anymore. I still think about Daniel. I probably always will. Not with anger toward him. He did nothing wrong in any of this. Only with a deep, aching regret that I let something so steady slip away for something that, in the end, meant nothing at all. If there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this. The moment you start feeling distant from the person you love, that's the moment to talk, to fight for the relationship, to do the hard, unglamorous work of reconnecting, not the moment to look for an escape somewhere else. Because escapes always have a cost, and sometimes that cost is everything. If this story hit you the way it hit me to live it, let me know in the comments. And if you want to hear what happened after the divorce was, finalized, because there's more to this story, make sure you're subscribed, because that part is coming next.